Welcome to Biggest Spoilars, the destination for exclusive spoilers, latest updates.
General Hospital recap for Thursday, November, reveals that Pascal returned as Windermere's new butler while Tracy Quartermaine asked Veronica Ronnie Bard to forgive. At Ava Jerome's place, she gave Lucas Jones a punch to move out and learned Marco Rios had been dropping hints about living together, but Lucas bothered about it being too soon. In Jack Brennan's office, Jocelyn Jacks was assigned with getting near to Lucas so she could find out further about Marco and anything connected to Jen Sidwell's part in Cesar Faison's final design. Still, Jocelyn would have to avoid Sidwell as much as she could since he presumably formerly knew about her WSB status. Although Jocelyn wasn't thrilled about having to lie to her family again, she accepted the charge and took off. Vaughn raised enterprises to Brennan about Jocelyn not being up for this challenge, but Brennan claimed this was the route they demanded to take anyhow. At one point, Brennan answered an unsettling phone call. A voice that sounded like Anna Devane linked herself as Anna and told Jack that Commodity had happed. At Windermere, Jordan Ashford tried to move Marco and Sidwell that they might need a backup plan if the Measure C vote didn't go their way. Sidwell was adamant that he simply must have Sonny Corinthos peers. G.H. Suckers will recall that Pascal was preliminarily the director at the Five Poppies Resort, but Sidwell set up a new cover for him working as Windermere's butler. Jordan met the new butler and spoke French as she ate him to Port Charles. Of course, Pascal was intimately still tangled up in all the Faison final design drama. Marco eventually talked to Sidwell about asking Lucas to move in Windermere. Sidwell had enterprises considering their shady conditioning, but he gave Marco the green light to ask Lucas in the end. Pascal overheard on that news and sounded upset as he approached Sidwell alone. Sidwell suggested that he'd be counting on Pascal to keep Lucas down from anything he wasn't supposed to know. Although Sidwell wanted Marco to be happy, he refocused out that Lucas would have to be dealt with if he learned Commodity he shouldn't. Meanwhile, Jocelyn paid Lucas a visit at Ava's place under the guise of wanting some uncle time. Marco eventually showed up at the door and caught Lucas off guard by blurting out that they should move in together. At Alexis Davis's house, she summoned Felicia Scorpio and got evidence that she still worked as a private investigator. Alexis wanted to know Portia Robinson's whereabouts on the night of Drew Kane's firing, so she sought Felicia's help probing her justification. At GH, Britt Westbourne came in Portia's office with her usual coffee order and tried to be redundant nice. Portia turned down the coffee, so Britt noticed her gusto tea and picked up on the weird libation change. Britt wanted Portia to finance her delegation to be a croaker. Again in the state of New York, but Portia wasn't veritably helpful originally. After Britt brought up the fact that Portia was pregnant, she spelled out some warning signs that had made it easy to figure out. Portia realized that in exchange for Britt's silence, she wanted Portia's help on this delegation request. Although Portia agreed, she reminded Britt that everyone would find out she was pregnant ultimately, which meant Britt would lose any influence. Portia also had the power to tank the delegation process for Britt, so she gave Britt an incitement not to make trouble. At the Quartermaine manse, Ronnie showed up at Tracy's request. Tracy offered up a terrible reason where she principally said she was sorry for Ronnie's response to the fraud fate. Ronnie fired back that the reason wasn't accepted since she knew it wasn't sincere. That said, Ronnie still planned to tell the rest of the family that Tracy apologized since she didn't want to knock them out of living in the Q mansion. At one point, Ronnie told Tracy to put a sock in it, so Tracy recalled that was Commodity Monica used to say. After Ronnie explained that they used to say that to each other all the time as kiddies, Tracy had to advance. Ronnie was stunned as Tracy poured her heart out and asked for remission over the way she'd treated Monica's family. At Bobby's, Ned Quartermaine, Olivia Quartermaine, Dante Falconeri, Brooke Lynn Quartermaine and Michael Corinthos got Giovanni Gio Palmieri to serve them breakfast. There was a lot of talk about chancing other living arrangements and dubieties about Tracy ever apologizing to Ronnie, but Gio suggested that Tracy might surprise them. Ronnie latterly showed up and gave everyone updates on Tracy, indeed offering a sincere reason. While the others went back to the Quartermaine house, Gio participated a sweet moment with Ronnie and claimed on driving her to the field since this was farewell. Back at the Quartermaine manse, Tracy enjoyed a reunion with Ned, Olivia, Brooke Lynn, and Michael. They all apologized for how they'd handled effects and got Tracy's blessing on moving back in, so that led to a happy group clinch. General Hospital spoilers say further Quartermaine drama is always in the workshop, but there'll be some family continuity for now. The late afternoon sun cast long, accusing shadows across the polished floor of the Metro Court hotel room, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like forgotten secrets. The space, usually a haven of luxury and temporary respite, felt like a holding cell. Ronnie, her once impeccable appearance reduced to the weary, practical look of someone on the run, zipped the final compartment of her suitcase with a sound that echoed like a gunshot in the tense silence. The case was a coffin for her life in Port Charles, and she was nailing it shut herself. Standing by the window, her posture rigid with a mixture of grief and fury, was Olivia Quartermaine. She watched the mundane action of the zipper's path as if it were a violence being done to her. The air between the two women, once thick with the complicity of a shared, terrible secret, was now charged with the static of a final, inevitable confrontation. So that's it? Olivia's voice was low, scraped raw from a day of tears and shouting. You pack a bag, you walk out the door, and you just disappear? You leave me here to clean up the wreckage you caused? Ronnie didn't look up, her focus on the suitcase latch. There's nothing left to clean, Olivia. It's all out in the open now. The bomb has gone off. Staying here just means standing in the radioactive fallout. She finally lifted her gaze, and her eyes were not those of a remorseful friend, but of a cornered animal calculating its escape. Leaving is the only sane thing to do. Sanity? Olivia let out a bitter, broken laugh. You lost any claim to sanity the moment you decided to tear my family apart. You didn't just reveal a secret, Ronnie. You took a scalpel and carved up the very foundation of my son's life. For what? Because you were jealous? Because you felt left out? The secret hung in the room, a phantom presence that had already done its catastrophic work. Ronnie, in a calculated act of vengeance after being ostracized by the tight-knit group, had unleashed the truth about Leo's paternity. She had revealed to a horrified Nina Reeves that the child she believed was her grandson was, in fact, Olivia's biological son, conceived with Julian Jerome years ago and passed off as Nina's late daughter's child to spare her more grief. The revelation had been a seismic event, fracturing Nina's newfound sense of family and shattering the delicate peace Olivia had fought so hard to build. I did it because I was tired of living in the shadow of your perfect little lies. Ronnie shot back, her own composure cracking. Tired of watching you all play happy families while you built your happiness on a foundation of sand. I just gave it a little push. The collapse was inevitable. Olivia took a step forward, her hands clenched into white-knuckled fists at her sides. You have no idea what you've done. To Nina, to Leo, to me. This isn't a game, Ronnie. These are people's lives. And what about my life? Ronnie's voice rose to a shrill pitch. What about the years I stood by you, listened to you, supported you? I was your confidant, your sister in everything but blood. And then, the moment I became an inconvenience, the moment my problems didn't fit neatly into your picturesque world, you cast me aside. You all did. This was the heart of it. The betrayal Ronnie felt was a cancer that had metastasized into a weapon of mass destruction. Her actions were not just about the secret of Leo's paternity, they were about every slight, every perceived dismissal, every time she had felt like an outsider in the inner sanctum of Port Charles society. The argument raged, a tempest of recriminations and poisoned history. It was a funeral diary for a friendship, with both women acting as mourners and murderers. Olivia hurled accusations of malice and sociopathy. Ronnie retaliated with barbs about hypocrisy and self-righteousness. The encouraging words they had once shared, words of support during divorces, financial troubles, and family crises, were now exhumed and used as bludgeons, their positive meanings twisted into evidence of long-held resentments. Finally, breathless and emotionally spent, Olivia pointed a trembling finger toward the door. Just go, Ronnie. Get out of my hotel. Get out of my city. If I ever see your face again, I can't be responsible for what I'll do. That's not a threat, she added, her voice dropping to a deadly whisper. That's a promise. A strange, unnerving calm settled over Ronnie. The frantic energy of self-preservation faded, replaced by a cold, grim resolve. The angry threats had been exchanged. The lines had been drawn in blood. But she wasn't finished. She realized that simply leaving would mean Olivia, and by extension all of them, would eventually paint her as the sole villain, the unstable outsider who destroyed everything out of spite. They would never understand the full, ugly truth of their own complicity. They needed a story they could never forget. They needed a truth so shocking it would haunt them long after she was gone. She picked up her purse, her movements slow and deliberate now. She slung it over her shoulder and walked toward the door, her suitcase rolling behind her with a hollow rumble. She paused with her hand on the doorknob, her back to Olivia. You think you know the whole story, Olivia, she said, her voice eerily quiet after their screaming match. You think this is just about Leo? You think this is just about me feeling left out? You stand there on your moral high ground, judging me, because it's easier than looking at the rot festering right under your own nose. Olivia, who had been turning away, froze. What is that supposed to mean? Don't you dare leave here with some cryptic, dramatic. Ronnie turned slowly. The look on her face was not one of anger, but of pity. A cold, contemptuous pity that was far more frightening than any rage. It means you're so busy being the heartbroken victim, you haven't stopped to ask the most important question, Ronnie said, her eyes locking onto Olivia's. How do you think I found out about Leo? The question landed in the room, simple and devastating. Olivia blinked, thrown off balance. You snooped. You overheard something. You've always been jealous, always looking for a way in. No, Ronnie's smile was a thin, bloodless line. I was told. A beat of silence. The hum of the minibar fridge suddenly seemed deafening. Told? Olivia repeated, confusion knitting her brow. By who? Julian is dead. The only other people who knew were. Her voice trailed off as the impossible, unthinkable implication began to take shape. The only people who knew were herself, Ned, and the people they trusted most implicitly. The core of their family. Ronnie saw the dawning horror in Olivia's eyes and savored it. This was her true revenge. Not the initial explosion, but the lingering, toxic radiation that would poison everything it touched. It wasn't a slip of the tongue, Olivia. It wasn't a guess. It was a deliberate, cold-blooded confession. Someone sat down with me, looked me in the eye, and laid out the entire, sordid story. She took a step closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that felt like a serpent's kiss. Someone who knew that arming me with that information was like giving a lit match to a gas leak. Someone who wanted to watch your perfect little world burn, but didn't have the stomach to strike the match themselves. The color drained from Olivia's face. Her knees felt weak. She gripped the back of a nearby armchair for support. No. That's a lie. You're just trying to cause more trouble on your way out. No one in my family would ever. Your family? Ronnie let out a short, harsh laugh. Your family is a nest of vipers, Olivia, and you're too busy playing den mother to see which ones are poisonous. Who? The word was a desperate, choked plea. Who told you, Ronnie? Ronnie held the moment, letting the suspense coil tightly around Olivia's heart. This was the pinnacle of her power. She was no longer just the scorned friend, she was the keeper of the last, great secret of Port Charles. It was a quiet afternoon at the pub, she began, her tone almost nostalgic, as if recounting a pleasant memory. I was feeling low, sorry for myself. Wallowing in how you'd all frozen me out. And then, they came in. They bought me a drink. They said they were worried about me. They said they knew how cruel you could be, how this family could close ranks and make you feel like nothing. She watched Olivia's mind race, frantically trying to picture the scene, to put a face to the betrayer. They said you were making a terrible mistake with Leo. That the lie was a cancer, and that it was hurting everyone, especially Nina. They said the truth needed to come out, for everyone's sake. But they couldn't be the one to do it. They had too much to lose. Their position, their reputation, their family harmony. Ronnie's voice dripped with sarcasm on the last two words. They needed a patsy. A disposable outsider to do the dirty work. And who better than bitter, unstable, exiled Ronnie? So, they laid it all out for me. Every detail. The affair with Julian. The pregnancy. The decision to pass the baby off as Nina's grandson. They gave me the weapon, pointed me in your direction, and gave me a gentle push. Tears of sheer, bewildered terror were now streaming down Olivia's face. Stop it. Stop talking. Just tell me who it was. Ronnie reached for the doorknob again, her final piece of theater perfectly timed. She looked over her shoulder, her expression one of ultimate triumph. The person who gave me the truth was the last person you would ever suspect. The person who preaches family above all else. The one who stands in your living room at Christmas, toasting to love and loyalty. She pulled the door open, the hallway light framing her in a stark, dramatic silhouette. It was Monica, she said, her voice flat and final. Olivia staggered back as if physically struck. Monica? My mother-in-law? No, that's insane. She would never. She loves Leo. She would never do that to this family. Ask her, Ronnie said simply. But think about it, Olivia. Really think. Who has always been quietly skeptical of your decisions? Who has always held a special, protective affection for Nina, seeing her as a wounded bird this family continually fails? Who believes, in that old-school Quartermain way, that secrets and lies are a weakness that must be excised, no matter the cost? The logic, twisted and horrifying, began to slither into Olivia's mind. Monica's subtle comments over the years. Her disapproving looks when the subject of Leo's parentage was deftly avoided. Her long, private talks with Nina. It was impossible, and yet, it fit together with a sickening click. She didn't do it to be cruel, Ronnie concluded, almost as an afterthought. In her mind, she was doing the noble thing. She was forcing the truth into the light. She just used me as the conduit. So you see, Olivia, I wasn't the mastermind of your destruction. I was just a pawn. The real architect was one of your own. The matriarch of the great Quartermain dynasty. With that, Ronnie stepped through the doorway. Goodbye, Olivia. Give my best to the family. The door swung shut with a soft, definitive click. The sound seemed to echo forever in the silent room. Olivia stood completely alone, the world she thought she knew lying in ruins at her feet. The initial secret was a tragedy. This new truth was an apocalypse. It wasn't an external threat that had broken them, it was a meticulously planned internal demolition. Her legs could no longer hold her. She sank slowly to the floor, the elegant rug doing little to cushion her fall. She wrapped her arms around herself, but no warmth could penetrate the icy dread that had seized her heart. Monica. The name repeated in her mind, a cursed mantra. The woman who had welcomed her into the family. The grandmother to her children. The rock of the Quartermain mansion. How many times had they shared tea? How many times had they conspired to keep the peace between Ned and the others? How many times had she sought Monica's counsel, trusting in her wisdom and her unwavering loyalty to the family? It was all a lie. A facade. While Olivia was fighting to protect her son, the family's matriarch had been quietly, methodically, engineering its implosion. The encouraging words Monica had spoken over the years, words of support during the initial cover-up, assurances that they were doing the right thing for Leo and for Nina, now took on a sinister, duplicitous tone. Had every one of them been a calculation? Had every comforting pat on the hand been a gesture of contempt? The angry threats she had exchanged with Ronnie moments before felt trivial, like children squabbling. The real war had been waged in the shadows by a master strategist, and Olivia hadn't even known she was on the battlefield. Who could she tell? Ned? How could she shatter his image of his own mother? The revelation would break him in ways the truth about Leo never could. Brooklyn? She was already reeling. To tell anyone would be to unleash a chain reaction of betrayal and heartbreak that would make Ronnie's initial bomb look like a firecracker. But to hold it inside? To sit across from Monica at the dinner table, to accept her hugs, to listen to her advice, all while knowing the truth? It was an impossible burden. It was a prison of silence far more confining than any physical cell. Ronnie was gone, her final, poisoned farewell delivered with surgical precision. She had left Port Charles, but she had also left behind a ghost, the ghost of Monica's betrayal, that would forever haunt the halls of the Quartermain mansion and the heart of everyone in it. Olivia began to weep, not the angry sobs from her fight with Ronnie, but deep, shuddering waves of utter desolation. The baptism of fire was over. The encouraging words that had held the family together were exposed as hollow lies. And the most devastating angry threat was the one that had never been spoken aloud, the one executed in whispers and quiet conversations, leaving a legacy of distrust that would forever fracture the foundation of the very family it was meant to protect. As the sun finally set, plunging the room into darkness, Olivia remained on the floor, a queen dethroned in her own kingdom, utterly and completely alone with a truth she could never unknow. The game was over, and she had just realized she was never even a player, only a piece on the board.